How's the ticker?
Still ticking.
You want to get in the war?
Monuments, man.
Signed by Roosevelt.
Oh, I see that.
I'm to put a team together and try to protect what's left and find what's missing.
Aren't you a little old for that?
Yes.
You want to go into a war zone and tell our boys what they can and cannot blow up.
That's the idea.
Okay, how many men?
For now, 6.
Jesus.
With you, that's 7.
That's much better.
And that was a clip from The Monuments Men. Delighted to say Matt Damon is with us, one of the many stars of this movie. Hello, Matt, how are you?
Great. How you doing, Simon?
Very good, but it's you at the front of the poster, so...
I have no idea why George put me in the front of the poster.
Yeah, you'd think as it's his film, he kind of put himself at the front of the...
He wrote it, he produced it, he directed it, and he starred in it. But he's, I guess he's too humble to put himself front and center on the poster.
I'm just pleased it's a George Clooney film, as opposed to a Paul Greengrass film. Because the last time you came on this show, Paul Greengrass told you to give me a very hard time about my football team. And I could hear... And I know you don't follow Tottenham Hotspur Football Club particularly, and I could hear Greengrass in the background saying, "Ask him about this and ask him about that," and you just took it all. And then, so he's working with Tom Hanks. So Tom Hanks comes on to do
Tom do it
and
too.
there's Paul in the back. He's giving me some hard time, and it's Tom Hanks giving me some.
Well, how are the Spurs doing this year?
We're kind of 5th.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, that's about how my New England Patriots did this year.
Oh, okay,
too, so.
all right. But that's good, thesis, because you're not working with Paul, so you're not going to give me a hard time.
No, I won't this time around. You're off the hook.
Okay. So explain the big story, and it is a huge story of the Monuments Men and where you fit into it.
Yeah, it's an incredible story, and one that I had never heard, and was kind of shocked that I hadn't heard because it's such a good one. And I'd read a lot about World War II. But there was this group towards the end of World War II called the Monuments Men, and they were comprised mostly of kind of over-the-hill in soldiering terms guys, middle-aged guys, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they had very kind of established careers and families, and they were curators and professors and art experts who dropped everything and enlisted so that they could go to the front lines and try to protect what they could from Allied bombardment and also to rescue all of these artworks. There were over 5 million works that these guys rescued that the Nazis were systematically stealing. Every place they occupied, they just took whatever they wanted. I mean, obviously they took everything from the Jewish collectors, but they also went into museums. Before the war even started, they had people going into museums and cataloging every piece of art that they intended to take when they came through town.
And why were they so obsessed with, essentially, as the movie makes clear, taking sort of everything? I mean, they took everything with them. Why did they bother?
Well, Hitler, was quite famously a failed artist, and he had plans to build a Fuhrer museum in his hometown of Linz, Austria, and he was going to do this whole redevelopment of that town, this whole waterfront area, and then he was going to put this Fuhrer museum as kind of the centerpiece of it, and it was going to be the greatest museum in the world. On the other hand, he also understood very deeply the value of art to all of us and to the world. And if you're trying to expunge somebody from existence, it's not enough to kill them. It's you have to. He ultimately came out with this Nero decree, which said if he died, they were to destroy all of the art, because he knew that the inherent value, as did these Monuments Men, who were willing to risk their lives to go get it. They were flip sides of the same coin. They all knew that when this goes, we all go with it.
There is a question posed in the movie, which seems as relevant now and as difficult to answer now as ever, which is, how many lives is it worth losing for the sake of art? And these discussions and arguments happen on the movie, and I'm still not sure I know what the answer is.
Yeah, I think it's when, if you look at individual pieces of art, you say, well, would you run in there and save it in a fire? And I think that's a different question from if somebody's actually trying to obliterate you, if somebody's trying to erase you from the face of the earth as if you never existed, then obviously that is worth something that you've got to fight for. But it's interesting. That's that, because we can sit in a room and talk about it hypothetically, but that must be the question that these men and women ask themselves, and they clearly came down on the side of it was worth their lives at the very least. They were all willing to die for this, and some of them did.
And explain where your character fits in with this story.
Yeah, George changed the names of the characters, but they're all based on real people. Some of them are composites, but my character's based on a very real man named James Rorimer, who was a curator at the Met, and and he went to Paris shortly after it was liberated, and befriended a woman named Rose Valland, who Cate Blanchett plays, and Rose Valland was a very big figure in France, because she actually worked during the occupation at the Jeu de Paume, and she was secretly cataloging every single piece that they were taking in a very kind of a very precise. She would take cigarette wrappings, and she would write in tiny print. She would write where every piece, each piece that they were taking, where they were taking it, and so she was a huge factor in all of this, and she ended up giving all of this to Rorimer. He said during his time there that he felt he was being groomed by her, and in fact he was, and she entrusted him with this, because of course there was also the chance that the Americans would keep it if they,
And that's the suspicion, which she says to you. Her assumption is you're going to take it.
You're going to take it back to the Met and put it up there.
And would you have done if you were given the chance?
No, well, these guys really, they felt like it was, that's what was so exceptional about them. This was the first time this happened, where these people went and they and worked to return it all.
Is it difficult, do you think, to illustrate the power of art in a movie? That kind of emotional tug and pull, which some people feel that if they stand in front of a statue or in front of a great piece of art which moves them, is that difficult to show cinematically or not?
No, I think it's all in the expression of the person. I just saw a wonderful documentary. Did you see this movie, Tim's Vermeer?
No, we reviewed it a couple of weeks ago. Mark
it's fantastic.
It, he said
it's fantastic. And there's a great scene. This just made me think of this, where Tim is allowed a private viewing of Vermeer's music lesson in Buckingham Palace, and he goes by himself. He's not allowed to bring a camera or anything or any recording. But they interview him, Penn and Teller interview him right as he comes out, and he's so visibly shaken by having spent a half an hour with this piece of art. It's a really beautiful. It's just, obviously you were asking me about Monuments Men, but this made me think of this moment in this movie.
I just wonder, whether if you're standing in front of a work of art, you may, and you have time, maybe you can get it. But in a movie, you don't linger on that art for long enough to sort of understand maybe the impact that it's having on the Monuments Men.
Right. I mean, there are moments. There's a true moment in this film. Harry Ettlinger, who's been with us on this press tour, was the youngest Monuments Man, and Harry is portrayed by Dimitri Leonidis in the movie, but Harry left Karlsruhe, Germany, the day after his bar mitzvah in 1938. The rest of his family, his grandparents, were rounded up shortly thereafter and sent to Dachau. And Harry, there was a painting in that museum in that town, a Rembrandt self-portrait, and Harry was never allowed to see it as a Jew. He was not allowed to go and see it. And Harry fled with his family to Newark, New Jersey. And when he was 17, he enlisted in the army, and he went back to Germany, and he became the youngest Monuments Man. And Harry found that Rembrandt self-portrait and had a private moment with it in a salt mine in the German countryside, about 5 years after he had fled.
It's a movie which has a lightness of tone, where at times,
sure,
and then at other moments you suddenly realize that what you're looking at is the aftermath of the war and the aftermath of the Holocaust. It's a fine balance for you guys to try and carry off.
Really a balance for George. I mean, that's the trick of, tone is really down to the director, and as an actor you're constantly you kind of course corrected by the director if you kind of step into the wrong movie for a moment, which we all do. But George and Grant, who wrote it together, they really had a great kind of sense of the film they were making, and they wanted it to feel like a movie that was made in the 60s. like Kelly's Heroes.
Yeah,
or
exactly like Kelly's Heroes.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's that kind of, where you do have to walk that line, but it's devoid of the cynicism that kind of entered into war pictures after the 70s and after our experience in Vietnam. And war movies were really changed by that. And they wanted to make a film that was completely uncynical. And he said to me, look, our movies, we've made these cynical movies. Our movies are actually a little more cynical than we are. So we're trying to make one that's kind of, boldly optimistic. It's a good one.
What did you learn from, you've watched actors, directors a lot, so I understand A Foreigner is going to be your movie, acting and directing.
It was. It looks like I had to walk away from it, though, because of timing. And I think Paul's
Greengrass?
he's flirting with it.
No!
Yeah.
With you?
No, not with me.
Oh, that's a relief, because otherwise we'd have to have another double actor, which
Well,
would give me a hard
I'm
time.
desperately Paul and I are trying to find stuff, but we just haven't been able to.
What about directing then, if it's not going to be...
It's with 4 young kids, it's hard. I really want to do it, but the stars really are going to have to align for me.
I've got some listeners' questions here. I would just have time for a couple. Phil Marsh sent this. What can you tell us about Interstellar?
Nothing. I'm not. I'm sworn to secrecy. My part is very small. And then Chris was trying to keep it a secret, and then the word got out somehow. But I had an absolute blast making it, and I think it's going to be. I mean, I loved the script. I just loved it, and I think it's just going to be another just fantastic Chris Nolan movie. That I can tell you.
Yeah, but he's famously kind of, make sure that you're all shutting up about this and not explaining and giving away anything. So this is what you're working with.
Yeah, no. When I read the script, I was in the Harz region of Germany, and a very nice young fellow who worked for Chris's company showed up with the script, hand delivered it to me.
Wow.
And waited while I read it.
Wow.
And then
they
went
took
back
it away
to California.
Again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you thought, yeah, okay.
Well, until I said and then I said, oh, I'd love to do it, and then they sent me a script.
Right.
But
And Matthew McConaughey's in that?
he is. He's the lead. He's the lead. And
he's kind of hot at the moment.
Oh, he's beyond. He's white hot, and should be. I always thought he was kind of misused for about a decade there. He's
when he was just leaning against people on posters in rom-coms and things.
Yeah, because he's very handsome, and I think that Hollywood tried to cash in on that, but they missed it. They missed the fact that he was as talented as he was, and so it's been great to see him get his due.
Now you do a good impression of
I do.
Matthew
I do.
McConaughey. Is that right?
I do, and he does one of me now, because on Interstellar we were working together, and I said, "You have to. This is getting embarrassing. I keep doing this impression of you, and you've got to, perfect your one of me."
Yeah.
So.
And you're not going to do it for us.
Well, I mean, let's see.
This is payback.
All right. It's just if I lower my voice a little bit and just go down south and then make my S's whistle just a little bit, then I can do it. All right.
That's great. Matt, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much
Cool.
indeed.
Thanks, Simon.